I may be showing my age, but I remember when prices for games went from being $50 to $60. Now I'm sounding like I'm coming up on my retirement age, but besides that, I thought it was expensive back then, but now we are seeing games where their standard price is $70. That is without any special editions like you would receive with a deluxe edition. I do not fault people for spending so much on a game. There are $60 or $70 games that I am legitimately interested in, but I personally would not want to risk spending so much on games very often. They could flop for my taste, especially if I haven't tried it yet. My mindset comes down to why spend so much on a single game when I can get many for cheaper. In fact, the total price for all the games on my list is under $45. There is no crossover from the other two videos. Any game that I would consider a budget game that was great last year, they are on this video. I'll make sure to include the prices with their gameplay, and if they would have made the Game of the Year or Honorable Mentions video, I will have their respective trophy on screen. Plus, if any of these are family friendly, you will see a family friendly tag. Kids can be expensive, so a cheap, good game that a child can enjoy is a big find for parents. But enough intro, let's get into the games. The developer of Castle Crashers and Alien Hominid released their newest game based around their long-standing mascot. It's easy to compare Behemoth to Flappy Bird, and obviously so. It stars a bird flapping its wings to move up and down the screen, very similar, but where Behemoth succeeds over Flappy Bird is the funnies. For starters, the two things you're dodging are foods that don't harm the chicken but mainly get in the way, and sharp silverware to turn you into food. You're trying to get a horde of chicks to a nest, and when I say horde, I genuinely mean it. The most I had following the chicken was 400. And it isn't stressful either, whereas its inspiration had instant losses. The Big Catch Tacklebox is really just a prelude to the full unreleased game The Big Catch. But it's free, and has more playtime that it can provide than many other releases of 2024. The game's best aspect is its focus on movement. It has many areas where you have to do different techniques in order to succeed, but it doesn't tell you which ones to do. It requires experimentation. The game does not hold your hand, so when you succeed you feel a huge sense of accomplishment. Each time you see a fish to catch, which runs around on the ground instead of staying in the water, your execution is put to the task. When I was recording gameplay, I had to tell myself I needed to move on. Tacklebox does a super job of previewing what is to come with the full release. For fans of the original, Celeste 64 is a continuation of her story. You meet Granny, Theo, and Battleline as you strive to nab those strawberries, but in a 3D perspective. Apart from the city world, you grab cassettes that put you in corridor levels with a gameplay musical feel that harkens to Mario Sunshine. Like the original game, Celeste 64 has that try until you get it feels. You will die a lot, but you grow numb to it. It isn't like platformers of the 64 era with lives. It sticks to looks alone in the inspiration of Mario 64. I initially was excited for Duck Detective because I was in my gaming detective phase and I've loved ducks. My friends were giving me a hard time about my excitement the week of its release, but it offers more than just being an investigation game with animals. My biggest compliment is that the vocal cast is outstanding. Sean Chiplock as Duck Detective is incredible. Brian David Gilbert's delivery of Frederson's line is hilarious. But this isn't just the search for the thief of a back lunch. It delves into a deeper problem while dealing with the complex difficulties in the detective's life. It does this all in a great, short experience that is a start of a series. The sequel, The Ghost of Glamping, releases this year, and that has me excited.
I'm the only one here in the operating office. Can you imagine? I plan all the bus routes and make sure the buses are on time. Isn't that so cool?
Don't you have an angry customer shouting outside about the buses being late?
Really?
Yes, it is another Vampire Survivors clone. There are a dime a dozen nowadays. How Halls of Torment sets itself apart is leaning into a separate inspiration. The game feels like a modern take on the Diablo franchise of yesteryear, primarily from the visuals, but the theme and classes do a lot of that too. Warlock, Archer, Cleric, and Swordsman feel like characters you'd pick in Diablo 2, or at least a Blizzard game from the 90s. It has nice secrets that provide both story and game progression. All that, along with being a well-executed game as opposed to just a cash grab, make it worth trying if you like any of those inspirations. I knew Maniac would be sinister, but I didn't expect it to be as much as it is from its isometric perspective. Remember when your parents freaked out about Grand Theft Auto before San Andreas? They would claim it would cause you to lead a life of crime. This is what they were envisioning. To unlock a character, you have to run over a certain number of strollers. Yes, it is another Vampire Survivors clone, just like Halls of Torment before it. Yes, it does take inspiration from a 90s game, just like Halls of Torment. But because it gets so wild, as an example, cops calling in the FBI, who calls in the military, who calls in extraterrestrials for backup just to handle you. The absurdity helps it stand apart. Its price includes an asterisk. It may be free to play, but Marvel Rivals is a live service game. I have not spent things on skins, and I won't. It is worth mentioning though. But even with it being live service, and my bias against them, I can attest that Marvel Rivals is so good. Characters have abilities that closely relate to them. When playing as the Hulk, you start out as Bruce Banner, transform into the Hulk, and when he runs out of health, transforms back into the weaker Banner. The roster isn't limited by the cinematic universe like it was in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. I use Jeff the Landshark as a prime example. He had no appearance or reference in any part of the MCU, was introduced to comics in 2018, and I had no prior knowledge of him, even when I thought of myself as knowledgeable about superheroes.
Imagine how much Tony could have helped. Double KO! This fight is lethal.
Slice and Dice, in some ways, fits into the gambling roguelike that we've seen. Dice are quite common in gambling, right? But here, instead of slots, poker, or roulette being the source of inspiration, Slice and Dice goes to the classic dice board game Yahtzee for ideas. The keep some dice and re-rolling the rest is routinely called the Yahtzee mechanism for board games. Take that mechanism and combine it with a dungeon crawl and you have Slice and Dice. But you aren't just rolling some dice. After you defeat a wave of baddies, you are given the opportunity to adjust a face on a die. Solitomb is really cool. Imagine a dungeon crawler mixed with solitaire. It uses poker aspects of the 5 cards you can play to give you armor, damage your enemies, and give them the opportunity to hit you. The game, similar to Balatro, is addictive and a nice way to kill time. It uses Pico 8, which is a virtual console that mimics the sounds, graphics, and limited colors of consoles from the 80s. Solitomb seeks to expand itself from the Pico 8, with the Seal of Solitomb coming out this year, but the version we got this year is a lot of fun and free. Web fishing isn't game-changing in mechanisms. You do as you want. Catch fish, draw pictures, play music, play scratch-off tickets, find trash with a metal detector. You really can do whatever you desire. Where the game strives is in its vibes. I streamed the game last year, and I was so invested in a conversation that I was having with other players of web fishing that I missed chat messages from my stream chat. It was at that moment where I knew I'd be playing web fishing for a long time. YouTuber Lucid made a video about how it's reviving the chat room games. People of the 2000s remember games like Toontown, Club Penguin, and Habbo Hotel. That is what web fishing is reviving, referenced by Lucid. Link for their video will be in the description.